Mhm. Hi everyone, I'm Jodi Christensen. I'm an editor with Black Hare Press, and I'm here with author Pauline Yates to talk about her new book, Memories Don't Lie. So, welcome, Pauline, and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Jodi. It's so good to be here. Hi, my name's Pauline Yates, author of Memories Don't Lie. I live in Australia, up on a mountain, and Memories Don't Lie is my debut novel that I have worked on for quite a few years to get it to where it is today, being published, which is just amazing.
I know, I'm
Um,
excited. I'm excited. I had the pleasure of working on this book, and it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I want you to know that.
Thank you.
So, my first question is, where did you get this idea? Because I thought it was a really unique, interesting idea. So when I read the blurb before I started anything else, and I just was so interested, so I was curious.
Well, I think the idea evolved as the story evolved, but the guts of it, with the memories, I am always struck with deja vu, where you
Mhm.
think you've done something before, and I've always experienced that throughout my life, very, very strongly, and I've always wondered about it, of course. Um, for this particular novel, it yeah, it formed the sort of the backdrop to it. Can I incorporate deja vu into this somehow? Another area of interest that I'm really fascinated with is cellular memory, and
Mhm.
that's only a hypothetical theory that cells in your
Mhm.
body can actually retain memories. But for me, I think there is a lot of credit to that because there is a lot of studies in there out there that say, organ donations and stuff. If someone gets a new heart, they can take on the traits of the person they got the heart from. And
Mhm.
that's quite common and recorded and documented. So I guess I started thinking, well, if you can adopt traits, physical traits or habits from a host, why wouldn't you have their memories, especially if the cell, with the cellular memory theory? And is that why we suffer or experience deja vu? Because it's not that we've done it before. Somebody has done that thing
Right.
before, but it may not be you, but you have picked up that from their memories. That kind of extrapolated even further just in like in normal family lines,
Mhm.
uh, like today, my day job is actually I work on sewing machines, not always a writer, um, but somewhere, sadly,
I
somewhere
know, right?
in my past, with a great grandfather, or sorry, great grandmother, or someone, were they a seamstress, and is that why I can sew?
Mhm.
I do know my brother, who was a baker. We were related to bakers back
Mhm.
a couple of generations, so
Wow.
those kind of things. So
Right.
all of that put together is what happens in this story about. I took that and twisted it into a little science experiment kind of thing. And yeah, what if you already knew what to do? You didn't have to be taught stuff because you already knew how to do it. You
Right.
just had to tap into it. So that was the basis of this
Which
story.
that's so interesting because that actually makes me think of I have a really big love of history, and I've often like have a certain time period that's really interesting to me. And I had ancestors who were pioneers during that time, and they were traveling across America. And I wonder sometimes, is that why I'm so fascinated by that particular time period?
Possibly.
And that kind of lends credit to a theory like that. So
Well, in
really
theory,
interesting.
if you have their DNA, because DNA
Mhm.
gets passed down in the genes as well,
Mhm.
then if the cellular memory theory is correct, why wouldn't you have your
Right,
ancestors' memories? And
right,
then being placed in a similar situation, even so slight, would be enough to jog one of those memories and make you think, hang on, I've done this before.
right,
So that's kind of where I'm going with this story, which I
right.
hope comes through, which I think it does.
It
Yeah.
does. It does. It really does. You did a really good job with that, actually. And I mean, sometimes in stories you'll find like, I don't understand this. How does this work? It wasn't the case with yours. You did a really good job of
Oh, look,
praising
you
things
know,
and, you know, like and showing
I'm
how
really
it
pleased.
works.
Yeah,
So,
I'm really
yeah.
pleased that you say that because yes, it all works now at the end. But I can tell you, I have spent years trying to nut this out so that it gets to a point where it works. Um, when I look back at the very first version of this, which I think I penned back in 2012.
Oh wow.
Um, the basic concept or the basic plot of that story is the
Mhm.
same as what it is today, but all the internal stuff and all the character development, particularly with my main character,
Uh-huh.
she evolved and I
Right.
evolved with her. I really didn't know who she was until probably the sixth draft that I did only a couple of years ago. It
Okay, so
was
how
only
many
then.
drafts have you done? Now I'm curious when
Do
you
you,
say
do you
six.
really want to know?
I do, actually.
I think this was number six. I think I've
Okay.
written so many different scenes. I have multiple. I have novels worth of scenes that are not in this book.
Wow.
Um, because I had to try and find the right place to start it, and I
Right.
have about three or four different places that I started. Um, it- Funnily enough, it was always only the first part of the story that I struggled with. The actual second part of the story has not changed that much since my original version, but the starting point changed a lot
I
because
actually
I
think
had it.
that's really common with other authors that I've worked with. There's a lot of times that people will put a lot of things in the beginning that don't really belong there because they're
Yeah,
not sure where to start and you want to start with here's all the information you need. But I mean, so I get it.
yeah,
I know that's why you end
I
up
know,
with so
and
many drafts of a story. Yeah,
I think I had to write what I didn't want, or I had to write what I didn't need to find out what I did need,
right. I think
and
that's
that was the
exactly.
process. Now,
Yeah.
sure, I wrote the first version back in 2012, but I didn't work on it every year since then. It was probably because I wrote the second and third after in the 2 years after, and then I went back to the first. We can get to that later. Um, but probably 3 or 4 months out of every year after that, I would sit down and say, right, I'm working on my novel. We're going to have another crack at it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it evolved. And I think the biggest journey with it was actually um, discovering who my main character was, who Sarah
Yeah.
really was.
Yeah.
And that took a lot of letting go of things because, you've got things when you start out, you've got things in your novel that you really like, and you don't want
Right.
to lose that. You don't want,
Right.
and, but they just caused stumbling blocks for me.
Right.
How do I get around this? And the biggest one was her name.
Hmm.
I did not want to change that. It was
Right.
real important that she keep her name.
Hmm.
Um, but I had to get around it. It created a really big problem for me, but I got around it. But I got around it because I was able to, okay, I can let this go. Now I know what I'm doing.
Right.
Here. And as soon as I did that, it just everything, okay, this has opened up
Mm.
doors that I thought,
Right.
oh, wow, this now we're getting somewhere, So
Right. And
that's
don't
what,
you think like you have to write all of those things that you don't need because
yeah,
that helps you get to know your character, right?
yeah,
And it helps you get to know your story. So you have to write all of those things that you don't need, not just so you can figure out what you do need, but so you can get to know those characters and you can
yeah,
understand kind of where they're
yeah.
coming from and what they want. And it really does help you get to know them, I
It
think.
does. And yeah,
Yeah.
so that was pretty big revelation for me. That was the turning point when I let go of stuff. They say, talk about kill your darlings. Yeah, that was one. And I stabbed it to death
Yeah.
and it's dead. Um, so,
Well, that kind of brings
yes.
me to my next question because, aside from your main character, because I think for all writers, you almost always just love your main character. That's why they're your main
Yeah.
character. but like, who was your favorite aside from Sarah? Like, who's your favorite?
Look, I love my characters. Uh, do I have a favorite? Oh, look, I would think that Magdalene is my favorite um, to write because she's just so wild, and
Mhm.
anything could come out of her mouth, and she's not afraid to say it, and I kind
Right.
of just love that about her.
Yeah.
Um, but all my other characters as well, Kelly, he's solid. He is the rock.
Mhm.
Um, Reese, he also had secrets that I didn't know until later, or that I chose to make
Right.
later on. Um, and I find he is actually probably the most important character in the story because without him, it's not much hope for the other guys.
Right.
Um, Marek is just solid and stable and brings that cohesion to the group.
Mhm.
But then my older characters, the Uncle John and Darius,
Right.
who else is there? Vera. Um, yeah, each one has their own distinct
Right.
characteristic. I can picture them very clearly in my mind, how they
Right.
are and how I wanted them to talk and how I wanted them to act. And I'm pretty sure that's come through now from the reviews I'm getting in. They're the things that
Right.
really stand out. And that makes me so happy because, yeah, that they were important to me. Our characters make
Well,
the
right. And
story.
I mean,
Yeah.
when you have a lot of characters, a big cast of characters, it can be a challenge to give every single one of them their own
Is it
voice.
a big
And
cast tonight
it,
compared to others?
I
I don't
mean,
know.
it's not as big as like in, fantasy or something,
Yeah,
but it's, I mean, you have the same, several that go everywhere through the whole book together,
yeah,
their little group. But then you have a lot of people coming and going, in the beginning when they're at the range, and then when they go, to the I want to call it the laboratory, but it's not really a lab. It's
yeah,
but
yeah,
there's different people there, and every, they go different places, and there's different people coming and going. But it can be hard to give everybody their own distinct voice, but you've done a
yeah.
really good job with that.
Thank
Like,
you, thank you.
I
Yeah, I
never
think,
felt like I didn't know who was who, or, if somebody said something, I could say, gosh, it doesn't seem like that's something this person would say or do. But I didn't see
yeah,
that very often because you were really good at, you knew your characters. You were really good at that. So,
yeah. No, thank
yeah.
you. I feel I do. And look, even the main antagonist, Joanna, which we always tend to not talk about because she's not very nice. But she is
Right.
a big player in this story. Even her, I had her very clear in my mind who she was, what she looked like, how she would behave,
Right.
and
Right.
tried to make her um, pretty much she is everything that Sarah's not,
Yeah.
you know. Um, yeah,
She is
she
kind of
was she
the
was
the flip side, isn't she?
yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
she was also really fun to write when I brought
Mhm.
out her true nature. And
Yeah.
even well, actually even when she was being Miss Nice, you know.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I really enjoyed sort of thinking, okay, what would she say here, which is just so not true, you know?
Right,
So
right.
yeah,
No, and I actually, I mean, I enjoyed reading Joanna because the way that you wrote her, as a reader, you're never quite sure if she's being sincere or not, you
yeah,
know? Like, you suspect she's
yeah,
not, but then you really do kind of end up believing her. And
yeah.
I don't want
She's
to give spoilers, I don't want to give
no,
anything away, but I just want to say you did do a really good job writing her because I
thank you.
often wondered, is she really being sincere here? Is this the moment that I trust her,
Yeah,
Or is
yeah.
there
Well, that's
something
good that
more
it's worked.
happening that she's not sharing, And so
Yeah, yeah.
you do find out as the story progresses, but she was a good character to read as well.
Okay,
So,
great, great.
yeah.
No, I do love my characters. Yeah.
So, sorry, some of the science and technology in your book, it feels really familiar, but it also is really cutting edge, some of it. And I just wondered, like, how, like, did you base any of this off of real technology? Is this totally made up? Is this a hybrid of something you've heard about? Like,
Okay, so firstly, clarify, I am not a scientist, not even in the slightest.
right,
um, which is why I've written the book the way it is, where it's all hypothetical,
right,
because I can't give facts, so I can't back them
right,
up. But in saying that, I feel like a scientist because I have done so much research along, down those genetics, genetic engineering, the cellular memory, the deja vu, mostly, and then all the okay, how do they put genes in someone? I've read
right.
so many things, so many. I went down so many rabbit holes in this stuff.
I'm
Um,
sure.
there are some that I can't even find again, even though I kept the links and I have a box full of notebooks that have just got link after link after link. Or it went down here, and sometimes I go back and they're gone. And you think, okay, I'll just have to remember from my notes what I read. Um,
Right.
like my daughter, thankfully, she was studying at the time. She was studying genetics at university. So if I was ever not really sure on something, I would ask her, and she was going,
Yeah,
I was saying, can this work? Or if I did this, could this work? And she's
right,
going, yeah, maybe. And I'm like, even hypothetically, do you think it could? Because
right.
everything in this story is hypothetical. But you have to wonder if there is, like, I mean, genetic engineering is happening now,
It
and they
is.
can do amazing stuff with it. If the cellular memory stuff is true, why couldn't this concept
Right.
that I've pulled out in my story actually, be actually work? Why
Right.
not?
And the
You
fact
know?
that you did research and asked those questions, it kind of lends an authenticity to the science in your book.
Yeah,
It makes it feel like it really could happen. And so that was why I
yeah.
was
Well,
like,
why couldn't it?
because it does as a reader, it kind of gives you pause and you're like, wait, is this something that could really be done? Is this out there? Is it
Well,
happening? And I just don't read about this, like
they
you,
do all sorts of interesting
yeah,
things, in
yeah,
genetics that we don't know about.
right.
So
I believe that.
mine's just another thought out there. Look, if I get, helicopters flying over my head, I'll let you know I'm in trouble. But yeah, yeah,
So that kind of brings me to my next question because you tied the science in with the military. And
yeah,
I quite like that. I thought that was a really clever idea because that gives them resources that, if you're privately funded, you might not get. But I was
yeah,
thinking about the beginning of the story and you set the stage so perfectly. It was just, I mean, from the start, it's action and it's questions and it's a few answers and it's a lot of things going on and you're just pulled into the story immediately. I
yeah,
loved I loved that the range, the shooting range that they're on in the beginning. So I
yeah.
was hoping you could talk a little bit about that and tell me how you did decide that you wanted that as your opening.
Okay. Look, for some reason, I do not know why. Um, I've always written military stories well. Now, I've never been in the military. Somewhere. I never got into that. That's okay. I'm a writer now, so that's good.
Right. Yeah.
So, um, when I first came up with my characters and started thinking about, okay, what do they need? And one of the things I wanted them to have is access to technology, access to guns. I didn't want to have to
Right.
explain throughout the book where they got everything. I
Where did
also
they get
wanted them to
everything?
just have money. Like, I didn't want them to
Right.
want for anything, really.
Right.
I wanted everything at within their reach so I could just get on with the action. Okay.
Right.
Um, so of course it was natural then for me to say, well, let's just put them in the military, because
Right.
then they have access to everything,
They have all the
um,
resources. Yep.
have all the resources. So that was that problem solved. As I progressed through and started working out, well, how exactly are they in the military? Um, I wanted them to be separate from the general soldier. I wanted them
Hmm.
to be different, and it took a few rounds of going through that I came up with the civilian safety response team. Now, because I've set this story in the near future,
Mhm.
um, I didn't want it to be like SWAT teams, but they were similar to SWAT teams, you
Right.
know. Um, but I didn't want to call them SWAT teams. So that's when I came up civilian safety response teams.
Okay.
And I used civilian because if you'll notice throughout the novel, anyone else, not that I've mentioned anyone else, but anyone else outside of their circle and outside of the soldier circle are called civilians.
Mhm.
That's it. They're not people or on the street
Right.
where they're civilians. And that's how we know them as. So that's how I separate the
Right.
civilian world from the military world.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, it was just pulling in. So then I did a whole heap of research. Okay, we want to keep this fairly real so readers can place themselves. I'd already chosen California as my setting. And then
Mhm.
so it was basically a trip through Google Maps to find out, right, where are all the military installations? What's the
Yeah.
closest? What do I need?
Mhm.
Um, I have tripped all over California via maps. I know
Yeah.
where every military installation is, past
Yeah.
and present.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and it was actually, it was just really funny. The things that just appear, I'd sort of like, for example, in one section, I can't give a spoiler, but there is one section where I needed a military base and I can't say it because I'm going to spoil it. Okay,
Right.
there were just things that meshed. Suddenly, I had
Right.
two things that I needed in the same place in real life, and I thought, "Oh my
Yeah.
God, this can work." You
You
know,
know, that
that
happens a
happens
lot
so
though.
many
That's
times.
happened to me in my own writing where you'll get that kind of suddenly everything just works and what you
Yeah,
need to be there is there. So that's really cool. Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
love
So,
that.
and timing was everything as well, like driving time, traveling time. Yeah, yeah. I would use Google Maps or the map, like how far will it take me to get from Red Bluff to Sacramento? And then
Right.
she's over here. What is that driving time? What's a realistic time? Um, yeah, which way would they go? Where would I make another scene to fit in with that? So yeah, it was a lot of working on maps. That's probably my most Googled thing. you know,
Was
but
California. Well,
yeah,
you were so smart too to set them up at the range in the beginning because it established immediately that they had skills. So there
yeah,
was never any wondering later, how is it they can do this, this, or this?
yeah,
Because you established right away that they have skills. And that was really
and
smart to
yeah,
do
and
that,
look at that. And that was also, I also had to establish where Sarah was, and this is why it took me a few
Mhm.
rewrites to get this because I had, okay, what does she know? What can she already do?
Right,
Because there were a few different starts to this, to how she became who she is.
right.
Um, and yeah, it wasn't really until maybe the fifth draft I started pulling that together. So I
Hmm.
was able to, yeah, start. That's where I found the starting point because I had to decide how much of her was she, and what did we know.
Hmm.
And I think this was the biggest thing for me. This story, even though I had all those ideas for the plot, and I had all the ideas for who Sarah was, really, by the time I pulled all that together, this story, that the final version is much more me discovering who my character is as she
Right,
discovered who she was,
right.
which feels right. It all feels
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah. It makes it sound like you're a discovery writer. Are you a discovery writer or are you an outliner? I mean,
Um,
six drafts, it makes you think maybe an outliner, but when you say you're discovering your character as you're writing her, that's something that
yeah,
discovery
I
writers
guess
do.
so. Like I said, sometimes you got to write what you don't want to find what you do want. That's
Right.
really big with me, unfortunately, because it does mean a lot
Mhm.
of rewriting for me. But I'm so used to that, I don't even question it. Um, yeah, look, it's always, I think if you're going to get really right deep into the characters, like I have, you need to flesh things out. You need to see
Right,
what's going to work because
right.
obstacles come up.
Hmm.
And sometimes you don't know that until you've written something and go, oh, no, hang on, I can't do that because that's going to stop her from going, instead of going from A to B, we're going to go from A to D, and that's not going to work.
Right.
Um, yeah, so discovery writer, yeah, that's a new one. I'll take that.
Well, I mean, discovery in that way that you discover things along with your character and you discover things about your character as you write them. Because, like, I know there are some authors who will do a character study and they'll write down, like, create a whole character profile and things like that. And everybody has such a different process, you know. So it just made me curious when you phrased it that way. So there's no right way,
Yeah,
no wrong way. Everybody's way is different. So it's
yeah, I
whatever
know.
works for
And look,
you.
look, to be honest, well, I kind of think that I took a long time to write this novel, but when I was up to year five, someone said, "Oh, you're halfway there. You're doing well." And I thought, okay.
Right.
And I think it's actually quite normal for people to take 10
To
years to
take a long
write a
time.
novel. It doesn't mean that
Yeah.
you're working on it every day for 10 years, but
Right.
you're letting it percolate over that time. And
That's
I'm,
exactly right.
yeah, and look, I'm really pleased that I let it take that time.
Hmm.
Sure, I mean, sure, I'd get to the end of the third or fourth version and think, right, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to publish. And then I'd get some feedback and it's, no, you're not anywhere near it. Um,
Yeah.
there was,
Which is discouraging, but also I hope somewhere in there you were getting feedback that said, this is really good and you should keep working on it because it's obvious that you did and I'm glad you did.
well, I did get earlier feedback saying that I should
Yeah.
split it because honestly, this story was
Uh,
so big and I should split it in half, make two books out of it. And I'm thinking, no, that's not
yeah.
what we're going to do. We're going to, my very first version was 90,000 words, you know,
That's it. That's actually a
um,
pretty
which
normal
is,
standard
which
size
is fine.
story.
That was,
Yeah.
yeah, that was my goal, was 90,000 words.
Yeah.
Um, Subsequent versions, because as is always happens to me, when I start editing, I take out what I don't need, I add in three times as much what I do need, and that blows the word count out. So suddenly I've got a manuscript of
Yeah.
130,000 words.
Right.
Actually, this final one, when I finished it, was 116,000 words. And through some
Nice.
really savvy editing and some help from another editor,
Yeah.
we cut it down to, I think she got it down to about 98,000. And then when I went through it again, I got it down to 96.
Yeah.
Um, because at that stage, when I'm looking at the query path and I'm thinking I'm going to start querying this, a 96,000 word novel, debut novel, is a hard sell, you know.
I mean,
So
it
yeah,
can be.
it was a it was a
It
gamble.
depends too. It depends what genre you're in and what publishers you're targeting. And
Well,
but
luckily I
I
chose the
mean,
right
I
publisher.
think
So
that's pretty standard size anymore. It used to be that novels were more like 70,000 was common,
yeah.
but it seems like now you see more and more that are closer to that 100,000 mark.
Well, I think
So,
that's okay if you're an established author and you've got books out there and you're a returning author to a publisher. I think you can get away with whatever length you want,
there
because
is some truth to that. Yeah,
yeah,
there is
because they
this.
know you, they know you've got a bit of history
Yeah,
with them, so they know what to expect. But for a debut novelist like myself, um, other than my short story credits, I don't have any
right.
credits in novels. So I needed to try and fit those parameters of 80 to 90, 80 to 85,000 would have been better. But I
Yeah,
know with the science fiction genre, you can get up to
a
95,000.
little
So
bit more. Yeah,
I was at pushing the extreme at the end.
yeah,
Um, and still, it was going to be a hard sell. So this is why we've spent so much time trying to cut just to get it down.
right.
Um, but yeah, did I have to? I don't think there was only one scene in there which I thought if I have to lose it, I will.
Yeah.
But I didn't end up having to cut it,
Well, I
which was
mean,
good.
it the
So
way that it reads right now, it reads as if every word is needed. So that's good.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
good.
yeah.
I would say you
It's
did
a
a really good
it's a
job
fast
with
read.
that.
Um, it's a fast read, but then that's how I like to read.
Yeah.
Um, that I
It
give
is a
full
quick
credit.
paced read for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I think it's great. Authors, spend pages, pages, nice descriptive stuff, and
Mhm.
whatever. I actually can't just write like that because I get bored really quickly.
Yeah,
I really want to get into the action and keep things motoring along.
yeah,
So yeah, that's this book is my style of writing. It's what I like to read.
yeah.
It's what I like to write.
Well, they do
So
say that
hopefully others will like to read it
you
too.
should write the book that you would like to read, and so if you
Well,
did
this is
that,
it.
then you succeeded for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, we are almost out of time, so before we go, um, is this a standalone book? Are we going to see a sequel or a part two to this, or are
Yeah.
we?
I originally wrote this as a standalone because
Okay.
you can never guarantee you're going to sell it, you never, or
Right,
whatever. So
right, right.
yes, this first one is as a standalone,
Okay.
but these characters aren't going anywhere. So I've
Good.
already I've already written the second and third drafts of the next in this series because I envision a series with this.
Okay.
Um, so I have two and three
Okay.
waiting for me to come back to.
Okay.
But I've got notes for the fourth one. But I didn't do any further because I thought there is no point going further until I get the first one absolutely spot on.
Right.
So
And get
now
it
that
out
I've
there.
got, yeah, so now I've got the first one spot on and it will be out to the world. I can now go back to the second one because I'll need to rewrite it. I've already pulled it out and had a look at it. There's not a lot, well, there's there's a ton of rewriting, but
Yeah.
that's me.
It gets
But
easier though, the more that you do it, it gets easier
well,
those
I
rewrites
already
and the
have my
process.
world. I've
Yeah.
got I mean, creating the world that I've got them in actually took quite a few years. How we're going to do this? So I have my world. My
Right.
characters are established now. Um,
Right.
yeah, that's I've done all the hard work on that. We're just moving them now into another problem.
Okay.
Um, I'll be bringing in new characters, which I'm really excited about. Um, and yeah, so the hard work has been done. I've just got to
Right.
decide now, okay, what do we need to change? What do we need to cut? What do we need to tweak?
Right.
And just really, I've got to sit down in front of the computer and do it.
And do the work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So when does Memories Lie don't when does that come out? Or Memories Don't Lie? When does that come out?
Mary's Don't Lie comes out on the 11th
On the
of
11th.
March,
Okay.
which is in,
Right around the corner.
yeah, right around the corner.
Okay. And
Yeah,
where can
so exciting.
everybody find you online? Where can people find you?
Okay, so you can find me online at my website, which is paulineyates.com. And that
Okay.
has pretty much every link you could possibly find on there for me. And I use that website to to keep it updated with everything that's coming out. All the links you can find me on places like on Goodreads and BookBub and Twitter, um, all the socials. So
Yeah.
so many
Take your
now.
pick, huh?
A little
Yeah.
bit. Where else can you find me? That's the main place. Yeah, go there, you'll
Okay.
find me everywhere. Yeah.
Okay. Well, great. And I think we'll sign off for right now and
Thank
we
you.
will come back and talk some more in a little bit.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Yeah.